Welcome to the Lowe Post Podcast on a gloomy Friday morning in the East Coast. It's Friday, January 6th. Ugh, I don't like saying that. We are a month from the trade deadline, and there are a heap of very interesting, we'll call them for now, mid to bottom tier Western Conference playoff teams that I have not talked about in a little bit. And I want to hit them now because they all have interesting trade dilemmas as their seasons go up and down and sideways and all over the place. And the four teams are Portland, Phoenix, Golden State, and Utah, currently 7-10 in the West. Still 7-10, despite the fact that I feel like the Clippers should get 2 losses for that last night against Denver and drop another place in the West. I can't. Every time I feel like the Clippers, they turn the corner. Kawhi, the numbers with Kawhi and PG are plus 12 per 100 possessions. The super small lineups are doing. Kennard's good. And then they just then they have these. Do you see the quotes after the game, Bobby? They're like, yeah, we got to play harder, play with more force. I'm like, yeah, no, this is a 4th year. Like, are we gonna get like you made the conference finals 2 years ago? It was a great run, broke the conference finals jinx without Kawhi, ruined the Utah Jazz, who we're about to talk about. My God, Denver, by the way, since about game 5 in the bubble against the Clippers, has had this mindset of, we got these guys. We got them. And you can see it. I think they've won 7 of their last 8 against the Clippers. They licked their chops with that matchup. They have absolutely zero fear of Kawhi and PG. That's just something to keep in mind if they meet in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you watching watching the Clipper game, you always I feel like when we talked about the offseason, we're like, on paper, right? On paper, when they're out there, I think they were 7-3 in the starting lineup when the two of them there, and then bam, right, down 34 off the bat at the half. Both guys don't play the second half. They're not one of our teams we're going to talk about, but they're interesting going into the deadline as far as, hey, they showed last year with the Covington and Norman Powell trade that they still have assets to go out and make a deal. We've got a ton of contracts between 10 and 20 million. They can trade a future first. If I was them, I would not be content as far as what they have right now.
I can tell you that they're not. They're never. I shouldn't say they're not. They're just never content. That's a hard-driven team that feels enormous pressure from Steve Ballmer to win. If they had lost that series to Dallas 2 seasons ago, the second non-bubble Dallas series where they were down 2-0 and then down $1 million in game 3, there would have been changes in the front office had they lost that series. Like, this is not a team where they're going to accept substandard outcomes, and their standards are really high. So in that sense, yeah, they're not going to be content. And I agree. I think there are 5 deadlines in a row they've made a big to medium-sized trade. Like, the history just says they're going to do something. And as you said, they have more stuff to play with than I think people realize. But I'm done with the Clippers, the science experiment of the NBA. I hope the paper they're working on for the medical journal, the New England Journal of Medicine on load management, I hope that's going well, because the season is only going so.
I was texting with Ohm during the game, and I said, like, I feel like the Clippers are like Club Med, right? Like, hey, John Wall's not going to play tonight. Who's not playing tonight? Who's on? I feel like it's like the Club Med for players to go and like, yeah, we'll see you in. You play your 41 games, and we'll see you in April.
I know I first referred to them as a science experiment on a podcast with Ohm, a science experiment as opposed to a basketball team on a podcast with Ohm maybe 6 weeks ago. And I know that line, it came back to me from several people that line drew, depending on your predisposition, drew things between laughs to consternation to anger from within the Clippers. But I'm done with the Clippers. Let's start with the Jazz.
All right.
Among these 4 teams, the Jazz just had a 5-game losing streak. They snapped it against the Rockets last night. The Rockets stink. I can't watch them. They're awful. Every time they have a little hot streak, they follow it up with being unwatchable. 3 of those losses had come on last-second shots, 2 against the Kings and 1 against the Heat. They are down to 20-21. They have the 3rd best offense in the NBA. That's incredible. They're 27th in defense. They are 10-18 since a 10-3 start. So still the vibes are good. It's a nice story, but 10-18, even with the bad luck in the clutch lately, it's 10-18. Like reality has smacked this team in the face. And to me, I think it's clear that although they have said all year long, we don't want to trade Jordan Clarkson. The owner loves him. The owner's family loves him. We're not gonna just sell. You're gonna have to bowl us over. We know there aren't a lot of sellers. You're gonna have to bowl us over with stuff. I think personally, it's time to pivot. They're not even that far from like 6th or 7th in the lottery. The writing is on the wall for this team. And to me, the names are Vanderbilt, who has a really nice little contract and is doing like a lot of playmaking for them in transition, cutting, making the extra pass, like bringing the ball up. It's a little walking a tightrope with him in transition, but it's working. And to me, I don't know if I'm the only one. I never hear Malik Beasley's name mentioned as a trade candidate. He might be the most interesting kind of under the radar trade candidate to me in the entire league. He's an incredibly high volume 3-point shooter, like 11 attempts per 36 minutes. There's only 4 guys taking 11 per 36 minutes in the NBA. It's him, the Splash Brothers, and Dame. 38%, 15 points a game off the bench. A little undersized, undersized to play the 3. Not a good defensive player. So that kind of limits the fit of if I have a starting backcourt and one good guard off the bench, can I really justify it? But everybody needs shooting, and everybody needs guys who can shoot off movement, fast movement, bend the defense off movement. And Malik can make that like one quick pass. If you double him coming off the pin down, he can make the next play. He's not a great passer, but he can make the next play. Do you agree that the Jazz should now pivot into seller mode if they haven't already? And do you have a favorite deal or Malik Beasley deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at where Minnesota and, I guess we could put the Lakers in the conversation. Like you see them they're coming, right? I mean, like I don't trust either of those teams yet, but based on where the standings are, like the Jazz are going to get a lottery pick. They might even have, it's going to be either theirs or the Timberwolves, right? It's like the process of elimination there. I think Beasley has more value than Jordan Clarkson. And I just look at it based on he's got a team option for next year.
16.5 million
contract. Clarkson can become a free agent. We'll see if he does that. He's certainly having a career year. And I think, like for me, like I'm in the process of writing this big trade guide. I'm up to Memphis right now. Like Memphis, this is not their philosophy, right? This is not how they operate here. You got the Danny Green contract. You got all your picks. They love the draft. 11 out of their 15 players are players they drafted. If you're not sure where Danny Green is, or if there's a concern that he could be part of your rotation, is that something that you look at, right? Danny Green, a protected first for Malik Beasley, and you have him
sign me
contract.
Up. I'm in. I got to put in the question is, who do I put in? Is it Aldama? I got to put in someone I care about.
Xavier Tillman. Does that?
I don't care that much about him. Apologies to Xavier Tillman. I would be okay with that. If he's a nice player, but look, every time they play Xavier Tillman, including the last 2 games with Clark out or 3 games, he produces. But I have 2 Malik Beasley teams, and you just named one. Make the case for Memphis as a Malik Beasley team further.
Well, as I said, it's not like he's going to be a free agent. If this was Jordan Clarkson, then I'd be like, I don't know what, I'm not comfortable paying Jordan Clarkson 16, 17 million for a guy in his mid 30s next year. I think the control, the contract aspect of it is appealing to me. I think that the role, he's not looking to come in here and be your starter. I think he's adapted to coming off the bench, to becoming a 6th man, to play 20 minutes. I think, as like when we get into the playoffs here, like game slows down a little bit. You shorten the rotation here. And, I just think his shooting is so valuable to this Grizzlies team. I get it. Like all the, with Morant and Jackson, like I think Denver's proven like the window is never open forever. Like when last year with Murray and Porter and all those guys getting injured, and now they're back in first place here. But I think the time now is for Memphis with this Western Conference to take advantage here. Like, I don't know if this roster is, I think things have to line up right for them to get out of the Western Conference.
I think you could say that for anybody.
Yeah.
But I 100% agree with you and have been hammering Memphis should should not hold so tight to this dream of we're saving all our stuff. We love all our young guys and we're saving all our picks, all our swaps. We have this nice Warriors pick too. And we're going to talk about the Warriors shortly because in case a big star becomes available, we want to pounce it. And like, that's cool. That's cool. Like, it's a good plan. Couple things. Bane is going to get, if not the max, close to the max. So you're going to have Ja, Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. making a crap ton of money. Ja makes the max already. And Jaren Jackson Jr. has been sensational this year when he doesn't foul. Can I carry 4 stars? Like, so if and their whole thing is we're not trading those, we're not trading Ja, obviously. We're not trading Bane and Jackson. We love those guys. We want to add to them. Can Memphis? Nobody can carry. It's hard to carry 4 max-ish salaries. So what's the dream I'm really holding tight to? Unless I'm not trading Bane or Jackson stance is actually kind of fake. I don't think that it is. So what dream am I holding on to? And I totally agree with you. They are good enough right now with one little upgrade. They might be good enough without it, but with one little upgrade, they got a real chance to get to the finals. And if you get to the finals, you got a real chance to win the title. Now I can hear the other side, which is, we have 3 guards, undersized guards, who are already in our rotation. Tyus Jones, John Morant, and Desmond Bane. We have Dylan Brooks, who toggles between the 3 and the 2. Conchar, same deal. Do we have space for another guard? And my response is yes, you do, because he's the best shooter out of that bunch other than Bane, who's one of the best shooters in the world. And maybe that means I don't play the Tyus Ja double point guard combination much anymore. That lineup isn't working this year. It's worked in the past. That's fine. Maybe that means I play Brooks a little bit less if he's Brooksing around out there, taking foot on the line 2s, and although he's been better lately passing. And we've seen in their brief playoff appearances, in some series, they have had to lean a little bit toward playing. They even played Brooks at the 4 for little segments of that Minnesota series last year. Slow-mo at the 4 is more of a traditional small ball floor. He's gone. I think there's space for Malik Beasley on this team. I think he fills a need. They are, and I think whether it's Beasley or somebody else, I think they need to be more aggressive hunting a trade like this. My other Beasley team is New Orleans. 1 million picks to trade. You look at their roster and like, everyone's pretty good. Do we really have any positional needs? I'm like, okay. I mean, I get it, but Devontae Graham's still in the rotation. Dyson Daniels, like, we see it all the time with these rookies. They're wonderful. I love Dyson Daniels, super high IQ, 2-way player. The playoffs are just a different animal. Like, is he really going to be playing 15 minutes a game in the playoffs? Even Alvarado is kind of cooled off from deep. Those are my 2 Beasley teams. I think he's a really good player. I love Malik Beasley as like a 6th, 7th guy.
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans, I mean, you've got the Garrett Temple contract, you've got Devontae Graham, you've got numbers, Jackson Hayes, who's going to be a restricted free agent. You've got the numbers to and as you said, you're sitting on all these picks here. And like, I look at Beasley, like, even if he wins you a playoff game, right? Like, he comes off the bench and gives you 14 points and wins you a game. I mean, it's worth it compared to what you're giving up if it's the 23rd pick in the draft or the 24th pick or maybe the Milwaukee first, down the road here. That, you're right. I mean, Dyson Daniels had a terrific rebound. I think it was one of the games, the game that Zion went off on. But are we going to see him in the playoffs? Shaden Sharp in Portland. We're going to see him in the playoffs, right? Like, these younger players, 82 game season. But when these teams start tightening the rotation to 9, it's a little bit different.
I didn't think about Portland for Beasley, just Lillard, Simons, but we're going to talk about them. That's an interesting one. They're obviously not going to trade Sharp. Sharp is a gem for them. They're not moving him. I'm going to predict this right now with absolutely no reporting. In fact, the reporting I've done would contradict this prediction, would say you shouldn't make this prediction. I think Memphis is making a trade at the deadline. I think Memphis is, I'm going to call it now. This is against my reporting. My reporting says the opposite. I don't care. January 6th, I'm predicting it. Memphis is making a win now trade at the deadline. Maybe not a big one, but something. Another name in Utah that we haven't talked about is Kelly Olynyk, and that brings me to our second team, which is.
Hey, can I mention
Yes.
one thing?
You can mention whatever you want.
You talked a little bit about Jared Vanderbilt here. In the Brooklyn section, I proposed a Brooklyn trade for Jared Vanderbilt.
Okay.
Deron Sharp, Kessler Edwards, and the Philly pick in 2027. That's protected top 7. If I'm the Nets, I take that and I protect it 8-14 that they would keep. And the first goes to Utah for Vanderbilt, and you get a specialist for, rebounding. Problem is, you already got Simmons and Nick Claxton on your team, who I guess are quasi specialists already. But if you're Brooklyn and you're kind of looking to shore up your rebounding, gives you another length guy.
I like it.
That's my Vanderbilt trade there.
He can hit corner threes, kind of. Ben Simmons made a free throw the other day, by the way.
I saw that.
Did they pause the game? Let's go to the Warriors.
Yeah.
Because they've been mentioned as an Olynyk target, although it's fine, whatever. 20-19, 6-4 without Curry, who reportedly is coming back perhaps next week, maybe a little bit later than that. 6-4 without Curry is a huge deal. By the way, also Wiggins has been out for almost the entirety of this stretch, and they have really no Wigginsy players on their team. He's massively valuable to them. 6-4 is a big deal. Obviously, we all know that they win every home game and lose every road game. They are 15th in offense, 18th in defense, with a minus 17 point differential for the season. They are plus 145 with Curry on the floor and minus 162 with Curry off the floor. Their starting lineup, Bobby, is plus 132 for the season. That is the best number by almost 40 points, 40 plus minus points of any lineup in the entire NBA, plus 23 per 100 possessions. I think we can now say, after all the bench uncertainty, after all the rotation shenanigans, after the Anthony Lamb, Ty Jerome appearances, after the benching of Wiseman and sending him to the G League, I think we can at least say this. Between that starting 5, which will be reunited soon, Jordan Poole, Dante DiVincenzo, and Jonathan Kuminga, the Warriors have now an 8-man rotation that they trust. After that, it's Moody, Lamb, Jerome, but Patrick Baldwin's been in games recently. But 8's a magic number for the playoffs. I think they've got to 8 now. And so my question is, given their tax situation, which every dollar they take on is like a gazillion multiples of a dollar, they owe this pick to Memphis. They have all these young guys, like headlined by Wiseman, who would essentially have to be in any trade because of his salary. Do you see a move you like for them? Because I think they are. You have made the point very often that they have generally sat out the trade deadline. They haven't even looked very hard. They've had the luxury of just being like, oh, we have the best team. We don't have to do anything. I think they're looking now in a way they haven't looked before, but I don't sense yet any urgency to do something, in part because, like, what's the deal? That's what we always have. Like, what's the trade? So do you see a trade you like for them? Olynyk has been bandied about. Pirtle's been bandied about. We can talk about those guys, but do you see one you like?
I think the one I would like, and I don't know how it benefits Charlotte, just because Mark Williams has been playing a lot more, and their first round pick would be Wiseman and Moody for Plumlee in Washington. That would be the one. My concern with that from Golden State is now you got to pay PJ Washington, right? Like restricted free agent, add to that tax bill. Plumlee becomes a free agent, right? So you can, he comes off your books. that's the one that would intrigue me a little bit, more than the Olynyk one, more than Alec Burks, guys that we've talked about who are fitting that $10 million slot, just because I get two guys, backup center, in a big wing, that can kind of, probably come off your bench here. And yeah, you're right. I mean, 8, as you said, 8 is the magic number. I mean, like, you look at Golden State, Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome are averaging 19 and 18.1 minutes per game.
And by the way, playing well.
Yeah.
Playing well. Ty Jerome, Van Gundy and I have been on this. Ty Jerome's good. If he can survive defensively, he's solid. Those guys are not, to be clear, I'm not just like Xing them out as playoff non-factors. Like, they've been pretty good for them.
Well, and here's the thing. One of them will have to get converted, to become a playoff factor, to be on the playoff roster, because two ways aren't eligible. So that's the thing. They still have that roster spot here. So maybe there's a 2-for-1 deal out there that opens up another spot. But that would probably be like, out of all the Wiseman type deals, that would be a little bit more intriguing for me, just because you get two players, two players back right there that can help.
So you mentioned the re-signing issue, which I think is a big deal for them, given Draymond, Poole, Clay, Steph are all making enormous amounts of money. Even if I get off Wiseman, who I think is due $12 million next year, PJ Washington's going to make more than $12 million. Mm-hmm. Kyle Kuzma is going to make more than $12 million. And so that becomes an issue for the ownership group there, which is already paying through the nose. And I don't want to cry for them, because they have this arena that's just printing money. They just wake up with money falling from the ceiling on top of them. So it's not a problem, but they care.
But Joe Lacob went, I don't know if you've read the transcript or listened, but he was on Tim Kawakami's podcast, and he said they are going to lose money unless they go deep into the playoffs there. What does that mean? I mean, it's almost like you own a house, and until you sell it, you're going to. I
was going to say, I could think of one. I think one way they could make a ton of money if they wanted to. Like I don't even know, what did they pay for the Warriors? Like $400 million or something like
450?
that. So I could, whatever the word is for 12 times my investment or whatever. So yeah, that. The other thing about Wiseman is I even last season, when everyone was like, oh, when Wiseman comes back, I was like, Wiseman's not going to play for them. Like, he's not ready to play for them. And I feel the same way this year. Like, Wiseman is not going to be in the playoff rotation, I don't think. They still do have this sort of number 2 pick sheen with him. And I just think it's a really hard gut punch to be like, we just traded James Wiseman for Jakob Poeltl. We just traded James Wiseman for Jay Crowder. Like, the guy who's not even, no one knows what he's doing right now. Like, that kind of hurts. The other thing with the Warriors, other than the 8-man rotation thing, is everyone's getting them centers, right? Poeltl's a center. Olynyk has at least some experience guarding like your sort of Dorian Finney-Smith types, so that Draymond can be the rim protector in that combination, and can shoot and pass and make plays. He's still a center. And I've said this before, but like, Looney is awesome. Looney's given me 18 to 22 minutes in the playoffs. Draymond at center is giving me X more amount of minutes, 12 to 15 to 18 to 12. I mean, they might start that lineup, Draymond at center, like they did in the finals last year. Do I really need to trade meaningful stuff for a center? Where are the minutes coming? The other guy whose name comes up all the time is Caruso. And so the Warriors are probably one of many teams waiting out the Bulls thing. And I get the Caruso fit. He's a tailor-made Warrior, but I have in my 8-man rotation that I just outlined, 4 of those players are guards already. Poole, Curry, Thompson, DiVincenzo. I just don't, I haven't found a Warriors trade I love for all those reasons. And Bobby, as up and down as they've been, given how good their starting 5 is, I can tell you they're not afraid of anybody in the West. I genuinely do not know if they will do anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you started this, they generally don't. I mean, really, the D'Angelo Russell Andrew Wiggins swap in 2020 was their last. That only time they've made a trade in like 8 years during the regular season here. And I think there's a body of work with Curry on the court. I know the road woes are certainly a concern, but that they, as is with a shortened rotation, that they can beat any team in the Western Conference without making a change.
DiVincenzo has started to hit shots in it's otherwise a central casting warrior, and Kuminga's good. Kuminga's good, and what he's done defensively on everyone from Morant to Tatum in the the Tatum types, not just Tatum, but like he's guarding the apex wings on other teams. He has enough IQ on offense. Like he's going to play in the playoffs, and B, he has ascended way past Moody and Wiseman and Baldwin and every other young guy on the team to this guy's not getting traded unless it's some seismic earthquake star for star kind of trade. Not that he's the star, but if they reconfigure their roster in a year or 2 years. Any other Warriors thoughts?
No, that's all I got for Golden State. It's hard. Right. It's hard when you're so top heavy and you're trying to find those sweet spot contracts and not give away some of your younger players. It's basically a process of elimination, right? It's almost, hey, remove all your core guys, and now you're looking just at your former first round picks.
I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they know what they're going to do. The next month, their schedule is okay. In the next month,
I pulled it up. They got
it's not bad.
Yeah, Orlando.
Got a road trip at some point.
On the road a little bit. Certainly winnable games. Cleveland, Brooklyn, Memphis on the back end. At Cleveland, then home to Brooklyn and Memphis. And you'll have Curry. Knock on wood, probably Curry back.
Here's a team whose schedule is a little bit of a problem. It's time to sound the loudest possible alarm bells about the Phoenix Suns, who are 20-19. Have not scored more than 84 points in either of their last 2 games, have not cracked 105 in either of their last 4 games, just cannot get baskets without Devin Booker. And I know it's not just Devin Booker, it's Cam Johnson. Cam Payne's been in and out of the lineup. Jay Crowder has obviously been MIA the whole season. Chris Paul, 13 points, 9 assists on 42% shooting. He's hit 41% of his long twos. For normal players, that's okay. For Chris Paul, that's his lowest mark since 2007. He's hit 45% on short twos, floater twos, not rim twos, in between twos. That's his lowest rate since he was a rookie. He just doesn't have it every game anymore. There are some games where he has it for a half or 3/4. There are some games like against the Knicks where he just doesn't have it for a minute. And they're dead in the water right now without Booker. For the season, they have scored, this is according to Cleaning the Glass, 107 points per 100 possessions when Paul plays and Booker doesn't. That would rank in the 8th percentile on offense among all 5-man lineups. They just don't have enough. Here are their next 9 games. And again, they're sitting at 20-19. And where are they in the West? Somewhere
they're
in
2 games out of the top. They're 2 games from being out of the top 10.
They are 8th. Tied with the Warriors of 2019, 8th and 9th. Here are their next 9 games. Miami and Cleveland at home. At Warriors, at Nuggets, at Minnesota, at Memphis. Brooklyn, Indiana, and Memphis again. They could be 12th in the West in 2 weeks. I don't know when Booker is coming back, but it's I think it was reportedly a month, and it's been 10 days or something like that.
Yep.
They have all their picks. They have a bunch of medium-sized contracts, Landry Shamet, Dario Saric, obviously players that people covet that they would be hesitant to trade, but still. And they have Crowder. And we went through early in the season fake Jay Crowder trades. And the challenge of making not only a present for present trade, which is what they want. They're trading a good present-day player and hoping to get a good present-day player. That's hard on its own. Doubly hard is present for present, hopefully at the same position kind of player. Like that's a really hard trade to find a team that's like, yeah, we'll do that. That makes sense for us. You got without incentivizing it a lot. They're in trouble, and I legitimately don't know what they're doing. The league doesn't know what to do with Crowder, by the way. I don't know if you talked to other teams about Crowder, because at this point it's like, so we're trading for Jay Crowder. Great. We all like Jay Crowder. Good winning player. Some teams he would start. Most teams he'd come off the bench. Proven playoff guy. Salsa dance LeBron right out of the playoffs. Salsa. That was my salsa. It's not good. If we trade for him today, well, 40 games have already passed. He's on an expiring contract. He wants an extension. Is he in shape? What's he been up to? What's the ramp-up process? Are we trading for like 25 games of Jay Crowder? What the hell is this team going to do, Bobby? Because this is, and then you throw in the ownership situation that Brian wrote about earlier this week of like, does Sarver between all the, does Sarver have like, he may has veto power over any deal that adds tax bill or whatever Brian reported, something like over a certain amount of money? Like that's a freaking mess. Is this just going to be a lost season for them? Because they're in trouble right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough to make a trade, and then it's doubly hard when you, as you said, you add in the ownership component here. I don't understand why, and I saw this in well, I guess it was in New Jersey when Prokhorov bought the team in 2010. Like there was an agreement with him and Bruce Ratner that he would basically incur additional costs if there was any trades at the deadline that was going to be spend. Basically, it was a number that Ratner was comfortable paying, and any trades above that, Prokhorov would incur. I don't understand why, or maybe they can, both sides can come together and say like I'll incur the debt, let's say, or maybe the additional tax payments that are going to come here, because I went through Crowder trades again last night, and like really the only one that I came up with that I guess would be make half sense. And this would be as if this team goes like, 2-7 and they're out of it, right? Like they're like, they're sinking in the bottom of the standings, is sending him to New York for like Cam Reddish and like, a salary filler. And maybe you get the Detroit or Washington first back, which is pretty much heavily protected. And who knows if New York will ever get that. Like, that's like a type that I don't see them getting a good young player back that's under contract. I don't see that right now. And as you mentioned, for a guy that hasn't played since the Dallas series last year, and who the heck knows where he's at here.
I'm stumped, man. Despite the fact that they have all these mid-sized contracts, they have all their picks, all their swaps. I mean, this is why they were linked to Durant. Durant put them number one on his now rescinded trade list, which, and as I said at the time, they were really the only team on the list. It was Phoenix and like everybody else. I don't really know if anything happened there, because I don't know how motivated either side was to actually engage in negotiations. I don't think it's breaking a lot of news, certainly not to you, to people. Other teams find James Jones a little bit inscrutable to deal with in trades. Not like bad to deal with, just like, what does he want? Are they interested? Are they aggressive at all? Like, what's going on over there? I legitimately don't know what they're going to do. They are a team, though. A name I thought of for them in the past and now is, they would be on my list of teams watching the Raptors. And if I can't figure out anything to do with those picks, and I want to save my team, I want to save next season even, I would look at Anunoby a lot if the Raptors end up pivoting, rebuilding, and they lost again to Milwaukee the other day. They played tonight, I think. I don't know what the Raptors are going to do. I was just up in Toronto for a week. The difficult thing with Toronto is people want to say, blow it up, blow it up, blow it up. And I keep saying, okay, so like game it out. What does that mean? What does that mean? Traditionally, that would mean trading my oldest veteran player who's under a long-term-ish contract for assets like picks and young players. Well, that's Siakam. Siakam's amazing. Homegrown player, great story. What is that getting me other than risking a long time of pain as we grow into the Scotty Barnes era? Okay, if it's not Siakam, it's like, well, Van Vliet's an expiring contract, Trent's an expiring contract. Like, those aren't blow it up moves. Like, those are just sort of like, I'm getting something if I don't think this guy's coming back here and this season's over. That's not like I'm reorienting my entire franchise and changing and getting a million picks in young player. I'm not getting like Gobert, Donovan Mitchell returns for those guys. Anunoby's 23 or 24, whatever. I just don't know what form it takes for Toronto, what form the pivot takes if there's a big earthquake trade there. But Phoenix is a team that I just don't know what they're going to do. But Anunoby is a name that makes sense for them for a million different reasons. And so I would, if I were James Jones, I'd be at least keeping tabs on Toronto. The other thing is Ayton has veto power over a trade this year, correct?
Yep. Yeah, his restriction is lifted on January 15th. He can't be traded to Indiana, and he can veto any trade, up until July 1 here. So you don't see him. Yeah, as you said, like they've got a lot of the in between contracts, right? Crowder, Saric,
Shamet.
Who else is there?
Shamet.
Shamet, Campaign, guys like that. They have those sweet spot, the guys that, Dallas was able to, or Washington was able to do a deal last year with Dallas for Porzingis, right? Like those guys that you can get a deal done. And they've got all their first and they've got all their seconds for the next 7 years. So it's there. Like my concern with them is like you get to an NBA Finals 2 years ago, and man, things change quickly, right? Best record in the NBA last year, and you get blown out in Dallas in the Dallas series, and now like we're talking about like, will this team even make the play-in?
I just don't think people have realized how much trouble they're in, because it's like, oh, Booker will be back. Okay, well, when Booker comes back, they could be 12th. They could be.
I'm concerned about Booker. I mean, not, just, those soft tissue injuries during the like same with Bradley Beal and with the Wizards. Like it's been a reoccurring thing this year. It's hard unless, it's, the All-Star break will help, I guess, but the likelihood is of reoccurring is probably stronger than it just going away. Right. I mean, it's just the nature of it.
It's always, those things are always worrisome, and particularly the comeback in it for one game and immediately re-aggravate it is worrisome to me. But I just don't know what they're going to do. But the season is slipping away a little bit from them. And here's the thing. Let's pivot to the Lakers for a second, who weren't on my list, but I do want to talk about them because I had a whole thing with Howard Beck on this recently. I keep hearing people say, well, if the Lakers move those 2 picks for X, Y, and Z, and we can talk about what X, Y, and Z are. I think the Miles Turner Buddy Hield ship maybe has sailed, given that the Pacers are good and Miles Turner is extension eligible, as I've talked about ad nauseum. But they'd have a puncher's chance in any series in the Western Conference, the proverbial puncher's chance. Okay, well, they're 18-21 or 17-21 right now. Here's the problem with the puncher's chance thing. There are two general problems with like the Lakers should trade these picks just to help LeBron. Number one is, okay, what's the trade or trades? Name it. And literally Howard's response to me was, well, that's not my job. I'm not the GM of the Lakers. Like, okay, but like, what's the trade? You're telling them to make a trade. What's the trade? Number two, the puncher's chance theory is flawed for a number of reasons. Yeah, you could have a puncher's chance in any series in the Western Conference. To win 3 in a row in which you're going to be an underdog with home court disadvantage in every time, you got to land that punch 3 times in a row. It's nice that you have a puncher's chance in 1. Puncher's chance means you'll probably lose anyway. That's what puncher's chance means. You got to win 3, or at least have a realistic shot at 3 to make trading those picks worth my while. Also, all of this puncher's chance theory is based on the best case scenario for LeBron James, which is he doesn't get hurt again, and Anthony Davis, which is that he gets healthy, resumes playing at an MVP level, and doesn't get hurt again. Well, I don't know if I can torpedo my future based on just the rosiest possible outcome, particularly for Davis, who just cannot stay healthy and played at an MVP level for like 15 games. And so those are my issues. So I'll take it to you. Like, what's the trade? What's like everyone's like, you got to do it. Can't hang LeBron out to dry like this. Historical great. Got to trade the picks. I'm like, okay, for who? What's the deal? What is it?
Yeah, I don't see a deal for both those picks in any way. Like I'm not trading both those picks for I wouldn't even trade them for Bojan, Bogdanovic.
Both picks for Bojan?
I mean, that's
even insane. Though he's got, and I love Bojan.
I mean, I think for me, like what the Lakers are realizing and what people probably have to realize is that like it's not a buyer's market. They're one of the 30 teams, that are realizing the harsh realization here that if there's going to be a deal, it's going to be the week of the trade deadline when teams are waiting for the best offer. Like the one thing I wrote in for their trade guide, like would Beverly, Nunn protect 2027, let's just say top 5, okay? For like Pirtle and like Josh Richardson. Like that's what you're looking at here. Like something like that where yeah, I mean
but here's the other thing, Bobby. Here's the other reality that people do not want to consider. You just said Pirtle.
Yep.
What have we learned from Anthony Davis's MVP stretch that lasted all of a half a second in the general scheme of things?
Best at center.
He's got to play center.
Yeah.
What have we learned about Russell Westbrook's semi-real surge off the bench? They need another playmaker. His playmaking is invaluable both for AD, especially AD, and LeBron. So I need to bring something like that back in a trade too, if I'm trading Westbrook particularly, which you didn't just trade in your fake trade, but still.
Yep.
Josh Richardson's not that.
Yep.
Not that. You could sell me on Levine. You could sell me on Beal because at least I've got those guys for next year. And that sort of gives me a bridge to the post LeBron era. Both those contracts are
well, and here's the other thing too, is that I know. I mean, 250 and 215. You go, let's just say like we get into the offseason here and we're, like one of these guys, the Wizards or the Bulls want to trade these guys. And they say, you know what? We like 2000. We like that 2 picks, 27 and 29, and give me a swap in 28. Because of what Davis and LeBron makes, you can't even just trade either player into your cap space. You only got 35 million. Beal's making in the 40s. Levine is close to 40 for next year. So it's not like you can just go out and, and acquire, either one of those guys.
You could, if the other thing you could do is separate the picks and trade, I'm just making this up. 1 for Bogdanovic and 1 for Kuzma. I'm committing to re-signing Kuzma, which is the use of my cap space. Bogdanovic was just extended, so I don't have to worry about re-signing him. And that's my team. That's my team for this year, and that's my team for next year. And those 2 guys fill enormous needs for the Lakers. Size, shooting, secondary playmaking, pretty good defense. Bojan's kind of matchup dependent, but is solid. Kuzma's pretty good. Like LeBron, Kuzma, Bogdanovic, Davis, guard X. That's a real NBA lineup. Is it going to give me a real shot? I don't know. And
here's the funny part with you mentioned Kuzma. Like, are you just doing it to make LeBron happy? Because you could just go out and sign Kyle Kuzma as a free agent and save that pick. You won't have him for the 3 months and maybe in a playing game. But is it just a PR? Is it just to make him happy?
I wonder if Pelinka regrets that statement from the beginning of the season about.
Oh, I put it in my trade guide. That's how I opened their section with.
About we have an obligation.
Yeah. We have an
to one of the
obligation.
greatest players of our generation.
Yep. He signed an extension. We owe it to him. Yeah.
We have some Lakers news, by the way. Lakers news. The Athletic reporting that they're going to sign Sterling Brown to a 10-day contract. Love that. Love that. I think Sterling Brown's underrated. I don't really get why he hasn't been able to see the floor for the last 2 years. He's got size and he can shoot. Fine. Great shot. They're bringing in DeMarcus Cousins for a workout. Godspeed.
But I mean, Thomas Bryant's been pretty good.
That's according to Chris Haynes, by the way. DeMarcus Cousins is not going to change their life. Sterling Brown is the kind of guy I like. That's a nice thumbs up, Lakers. Yep. Okay, last team, Portland.
Yep.
Kind of fell off the radar after their surprising feel-good start. Still 19-18. Dame has missed 12 games. They're 5-7 in those 12 games. 9th in offense, 21st in defense. They've played 15 home games in a league-high 22 road games. So they have a bunch of home games coming up. They have to be thrilled, I think, with where they are at 19-18, given their schedule and injuries. Justice Winslow's also been out for a long time. Gary Payton's been out for almost the entire season, came back, then was out again. Jeremy Grant has been outstanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, becomes extension eligible today
Saturday.
or tomorrow.
Saturday, yep. 4 years, 113.
They owe a top 14 protected pick to the Bulls that stays top 14 protected through 2028. So right now they cannot trade a first round pick.
Correct.
That top 14 pick is really interesting, by the way. It's a fun one to monitor. It's going to go back and forth whether the Bulls are going to get that pick or not and when. And they are a Tesla under the luxury tax. They're like 65 grand. I have no idea what a Tesla costs. I just thought that was an expensive car. They're a Tesla under the luxury tax. And when you're a Tesla under the luxury tax, you do not want to buy a Tesla that takes you over the luxury tax. It's just not worth it. It's not that nice of a car to incur the penalty and not get the windfall you get for being under the tax. I don't know what they're, but you know, they also don't have a ton of like expendable salary. They're not trading Sharp. Peyton just signed. Josh Hart's got a really team-friendly contract, but he's a big part of their team. Grant, Simons, Lillard are keepers. Nasir Little is on a contract that he's been injured most of the year. He'll come back at some point. He's on a 4-year, $28 million extension. If he just plays, he's going to play himself into being a much more powerful trade asset than he is now, if they ever want to trade him. I don't know. They'll search around, but they're a pretty solid team. They could use a backup center. They could use another wing. They could use lots of things, but I don't know. You see anything for them?
It's hard. You know, I mean, as you said, their tax situation, their draft pick. I mean, the other night, they've got some injuries in the Minnesota loss. Their bench was Shaedon Sharp, Jabari Walker, Keon Johnson, Drew Eubanks, right? Like that's kind of who they are. I think they're 5-1 in games that Lillard scores more than 36. So that, that's certainly something to keep an eye on. I mean, the Hart, and he's been good for him. The Hart situation is interesting because he's got a funky contract where basically he's got a player option for next year. And if he opts in, then the contract becomes non-guaranteed. So, are you concerned he's going to become a free agent? What the cost is going to be? I don't think you have to move off on him. You could probably just let that situation play out here, but it's hard. I mean, besides him, it's really like, the Winslows, as I mentioned, those are your that's your he's been out. That's your $4 million guy. And you're not going into the tax. So you're kind of, who you are right now.
They could just use a minute stopper. Even if like Kuzma's better than a minute stopper, Bogdanovic is better. Those guys, even if they just filled minutes that are currently going to the guys you just mentioned, and even Winslow, like I'm not really sure I trust the Justice Winslow thing if he gets healthy. But again, the salary makes it hard. Josh Hart, the one thing I love Josh Hart, regular 10 things like guy, one of the best rebounding guards in the recent history of the NBA. He's weirdly just stopped shooting threes. I don't know if you noticed that. He's taking 1.9 threes per game. and he's passing up too many open looks to drive into nothingness. Now, he can make plays out of that sometimes, but they need him to shoot threes. He's an average three-point shooter. That's fine. He's got to shoot them. And they just need Dame to stay healthy. And I think I don't know if they're going to crack the top 6, but I think their floor is pretty steady as long as Dame stays healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I just because I got to put a trade in for everyone, like for my Cleveland trade section, I put Josh Hart for Jetty Osman and Lamar Stevens. Like, they're looking for,
2 bodies for one for Portland.
Yeah, 2 bodies for one. I don't know what it does for Portland. It gives them another bench guy and some shooting here. But I just, I think they, as you said, I think they're in a, although they're 2-5 in the last 7, compared to where they were last year, it's hard. It's hard kind of going from, the bottom in the lottery here to be back in the top 6 where they are right now.
What's the most they can give Grant tomorrow?
113
for 4, right?
Yep.
I wonder if he even signs that. What can he do if he waits to be, does he have a player option for next year? What does he have?
Yeah, just straight free agent, bird rights.
So if I'm him, do I just wait it out? And he's having an absolutely outstanding season.
Yeah.
22
all-star worthy, right? I think you could probably talk about him as a potential there's going to be a lot of guys as a reserve.
49%, 45% from 3, solid defense. Like, if I'm him, do I just say, I know that was sort of assumed by everyone in the world when you guys made this trade for you, but like, I think I'll just wait it out and see if I get the max.
Yeah. I mean, the market this offseason is better than it was last year when there was 4 teams. I think we're looking at 9 that maybe can go to 12 or 13. A lot of those are the rebuilds, the Orlandos of the world, Houston, that whole group, Indiana. Maybe not Indiana. We don't put them in there. Detroit is former team. I don't think that's going to happen, but there is more of a marketplace for, players like him this offseason than it was probably this past July.
I'm glad we talked about these 4 teams. These are 4 really interesting teams in the thick of the play-in/playoff race. You could put them anywhere. I mean, if you just look at the West now, barring injury, and someone's always injured, particularly New Orleans, everyone's always injured. Denver, Memphis, New Orleans has kind of solidified itself as a top 3. There's a 3-game gap then between Dallas and Sacramento at 4 and 5. But the difference between 4 and 9 is very, very thin. Like, those teams, the teams we've talked about, other than Utah, maybe Utah too, could go anywhere in there. So it's an interesting group of teams. Bobby Marks, when does this come out? This
January
novella?
16th. Oh, my poor editors. I'm already up to 11,000 words, and I am on the M's today. Miami is today. Miami, Minnesota, Milwaukee. Those are my 3
I'm
teams
gonna have
today.
to set aside. I don't know what I'm gonna do. If the weather's nice, I'll maybe sit outside, print it out, go old school, get a little cup of coffee, maybe a beverage, maybe if it's in the evening, maybe I'll sprinkle a little Baileys into my late afternoon coffee.
Well, you guys will get the rough draft of it beforehand. You won't have to print it off ESPN.com.
Bobby, your work is indispensable. Thank you, sir. And I'm sure I will talk to you soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, let's bring in from the Sacramento Kings, who's above this stratosphere right now, Mr. Kevin Huerter is coming on to join us. As we continue our jaunt around the Western Conference, it's time to talk about one of the feel-good stories of the season so far, the Beam team. The Sacramento Kings sitting at 20-17, joining us, their starting shooting guard, Kevin Huerter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
You are doing well. It's been a great season for you, 42% from 3. You've never been in the 3-point shootout before. Have you started your lobbying for the 3-point shootout? Do you want to do the 3-point shootout? Is this podcast part of you getting onto the 3-point shootout?
I guess now it is. Now that we're talking about it, I would definitely do it. So we will see. Hopefully that's something my agent can help out with. Hopefully something the Kings can help out with. But here to here, I would do it. Something I'd look forward to and try to do at some point in my career.
What's the money ball rack for you? Which one?
I go from one of the corners, so I'd probably pick the last corner, try to get all my shots up. Hopefully, I'm in rhythm by the end and take the last corner.
Have you pressed the button yet? The button that definitely for sure activates the actual beam. Like for sure it's a real functioning button. And when you hit it, the purple light comes on through the stadium. Have you had the honor of hitting it yet?
I have. It was actually, I did it about a week ago. Totally connected to the beam. Right when you press it, it lights up on the big scoreboard. At least we wish it did. It was a little bit awkward. It was they're working on it. You know, I think they've changed the button a couple times to try to make it, you know, try to connect the two. You see it comes on the big screen after games, and you hit the button in front of the crowd. But I was able to do it a week ago. It was a lot of fun. A little bit more uneventful than I thought it would, because I thought it was going to be like simultaneous, you know, sync, nice and sync. I could press a button, it was going to go up, but it took a couple seconds afterwards, so it's a little awkward.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anybody's belief in the power of the button, so I'll just leave it. Leave it. Was that after your game winner against Utah? Is that when you did it? I feel like they have. If you hit a game winning like almost buzzer beater, you have to be the guy.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. The weird part, it was the game before we played Denver, and it was probably my worst game in like a 2-week span, and they asked me to do it. And I was like, well, this isn't the game I'm supposed to do it for. And then the following game was that Utah game. So I think the beam definitely gave me some power.
And I think you're credited with Beam Team, with the moniker Beam Team. People within the Kings are crediting you for that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was sitting in the cold tub one day just trying to like think of something, and I posted a picture and just hashtagged the Beam Team, and everybody kind of loved it and ran with it.
I want you to be honest with me, because I think I know the real answer. I have little birdies who have told me the real answer. I think you were in Ibiza when you got traded. What was your actual honest reaction to Kevin Huerter getting traded to the Sacramento Kings? Be honest.
I mean, right away, it was kind of like, it was disbelief. I mean, because the whole day, like it was a domino effect. Like I could feel it coming. I was in Ibiza. I had horrible service. I was in a house in these hills. The claim to fame was like, apparently Messi had a house that was close to us, but everyone says Messi has a house everywhere in Spain. So we were like in these hills with no car and horrible service. And my agent had basically told me that morning that, you know, teams had been calling, and that something was looking like it was going to get done, and just to be around my phone and available, because, you know, things were kind of happening fast. And so I was hanging out by the pool. My phone was sitting out in the sun, so I got that message like it had overheated. So I went back to my phone. I couldn't access it, so I moved it inside and then went back down by the pool for like half an hour. And when I got back to my phone, it was like I was blown up, like messages from everybody in the front office in Atlanta, a couple friends that were in Atlanta, my agent, my parents, like everybody was reached out. And the funniest part, the first time I saw that it was Sacramento, it was a number I didn't have saved. And so it was just like came up as a number, and it was just like, wow, Sac, exclamation point. And to this day, I still actually don't know who the person was. I never responded to it, but like the first process, or the first time that it like overcame me that it was Sacramento, was by a random number that I don't have saved. So I opened up my phone, called my agent. He had dropped the news, and that was that.
So there are you played for the Atlanta Hawks at the time. There are 29 other teams in the NBA you could have been traded to. The one you were traded to is the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings of a 16-year playoff drought of 11 coaches in like whatever amount of years. Was part of you a little trepidatious about, this place has been weird for a long time?
I was, for sure. Yeah, I'm an East Coast guy. I'm an upstate New York guy. I grew up, you know, it's not like the Sacramento Kings. It's not like their fan gear is plastered all around the East Coast. Especially in my lifetime, you know, the early 2000s, those were only the real teams that had won in Sacramento. So it wasn't necessarily a team that I grew up playing with in 2K. Even when I was in Atlanta, when you come out to Sacramento, you're here one time a year and you leave, and usually it's a pretty quick trip. You're trying to get to LA. So I didn't have much connection to Sacramento. at the time of the trade. So yeah, there was at first it was definitely a little bit trepidation. Didn't really know what I was walking into. Didn't really know anything at all about Sacramento. Didn't know much about the organization. I knew they just had hired Mike Brown. I knew him obviously, and I knew some of the players that they had on their team. And they made the big trade in Domas the year before. But other than that, like all the history of Sacramento and now knowing what I know now, how good their fans are and what the city was like I knew none of that. I'd been to Sacramento 4 times in my life, and it was all just from playing in the NBA, and I was here for a total of probably 4 days.
Speaking of the early 2000s, a period of NBA history that I hold near and dear as a 40-something person, and the Kings particularly, I told you before the podcast, every neutral fan in the NBA was rooting for those teams to win the title. Please share with the world what you found yourself doing at 2 a.m. Last night, when probably all the analytics and training staff were like, you got to get your sleep in, you got to get your REM sleep. What were you actually doing?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, so last night we lost a close game to the Hawks. And so our next game coming up, we play the Lakers. And so I was laying in bed. It was like 1:30 in the morning. I couldn't fall asleep, which is usual. I feel like you get to that point in the night and can't fall asleep. And my friend, I had a friend out here who is like the most diehard Kings fan you'll ever meet, like knows the history. I can probably ask him, tell me about this game in 2007, and he'll tell you the score and who was the high scorer. So he's one of those. And so about a week ago, he was just running through the whole history of all the great Kings teams. So the early 2000s, late 90s, talking to me how, oh, they made this trade. They traded away this guy to add Mike Bibby. And, we sent away Jason Williams, and Chris Webber was here, and Vlade and Peja. So he's going through the whole history of it. And so he told me a little bit about the Lakers series, and I believe it was the 02-03 season.
Oh, 102. Oh, 102.
Oh, 102. And so, like I said, I'm learning a lot about the history of the Kings. And so last night I went on YouTube, and like I think my direct search bar was Game 6 Kings Lakers conspiracy. And so I went on, and there was like a 6-minute video of a guy talking about and going through Game 6 and whatever foul calls were or were not called, and the free throws. And so I learned a little bit about that series and how it went down for possibly the best Kings team that the organization has had.
Did you see? I mean, I know you just did Game 6, so you saw when Mike Bibby's face fouled Kobe Bryant's arms.
Yes.
Were you? Have you seen? I assume at some point you've seen the Robert Horry buzzer beater from Game 4 of that same series. Did you see the Warriors? Who did they beat? I think it was Warriors Hawks. Actually, it was like a reenactment of that shot the other night where DeJounte Murray was Vlade Divac tipping it out, and Dante DiVincenzo was Robert. It was the first thing I thought of, was like, oh my God, that's the Horry shot.
Yeah, no, it was. It's one of those things like you see different things in the history of the NBA and you don't fully put it all together. And so now, like, you're talking about the Robert Horry shot, and even like the Chris Webber's block in that Game 6, like I had seen that replay before, but like you don't exactly put the full timeline together. So now that you're putting it all and it all is kind of, making sense, you can start to put together the pieces of how that series went down. But I had seen, like I said, seen different clips and finally able to fully grasp what happened.
How quickly do you discover that you and Domas have this special dribble handoff connection, left wing flying around, handoffs, pick and rolls? Like, how quickly does that come?
It was easy. It was honestly super easy. Me and Doug McDermott share the same agent. And so I think my first conversation I had with my agent sitting in Ibiza, asking him like, how is this, tell me about the organization. How is this about to go down? And like the first thing he said was, Doug absolutely loved playing with Domas. Like, you're going to love it. Domas got him so many shots. He's unselfish. He's going to get you open. Like, I'm telling you, you're going to love playing with this guy. You've never played with a guy of this caliber or the way his play style ever before in your life. You're going to love it. And so it's kind of like right away, I think I got to SAC. I did my physicals, and I was there for media. And then I pretty much started working out right away. And Domas was playing over in the world. He was playing one of the World Cups, the Euro basketball. So he came really mid-September, and it was like right away an open gym. I think Domas asked to be on my team. He's like, hey, let me get Kevin right away. It was just like flying off screens and him getting me open. And so that kind of carried over into the regular season. he draws so much attention. Yeah. I'd have to assume on everyone's scouting report, he's got to be the first guy listed just because his physicality, he demands double teams. And so every team is so geared up to stop him and obviously stop De'Aaron that, like most games, I'm getting wide open shots just from sprinting off of screens and continuously trying to move. And so it's been great for me, obviously, in my career to be playing with a guy like him.
How aware are do you guys ever, when's the last time you had like a real practice?
I don't know if people know, we practice like a college team. Like
Really?
our shoot arounds are like an hour and a half. Today we even so we had a back-to-back. We'll practice tomorrow. But like if we fly, like we played, I think a week ago, we played Utah at home after that was the game winner we hit, close game. Next day we fly to Memphis, we practiced and then shoot around, then played Memphis. So I mean that's Mike. Like Mike is very detail oriented. He wants to practice. You know, if he sees us screw something up in film, you can pretty much book it. We're gonna go over whatever action we screwed up defensively the next day in practice. So
all right, what's your worst film screw up of the year? What's your worst Kevin Huerter gets called out in the film room moment so far this year?
Just guarding guys one-on-one, not giving up middle. That's usually I'm usually pretty good on the weak side, being in the right spot as a help defender, but I give up middle a little too much. So Mike makes sure to let me know about that.
So in practice, full on practice, you're doing 5-on-5. How aware is everyone about Domas's thumb? Is he like the quarterback that no one's allowed to touch in football practices? Like, and even when you're coming off handoffs and stuff for him, are you thinking about like, I better not knock this dude's thumb the wrong way?
Yeah, honestly, like you can't even tell. Like Domas, when it first happened, he was away for the team for like a 2-day span. He was getting tests. So we practiced and he wasn't in practice, and they kind of like kept it all under wraps. We didn't really know how hurt he was. And he came back, and like the first thing he says, like, I'm playing tomorrow. And this was the first time we had a back-to-back against Denver, and he didn't play the first game, played the second game, but he tried to play the first game and he couldn't get his splint like made fast enough, but he was going to play that game. And so he just like, he didn't miss a beat. And for the most part, he goes against coaches in practice. So I'm sure that there was a conversation about coaches making sure not to.
You know, I always think about that. There's one Clippers assistant who I know who's Kawhi's warm-up guy. And he likes contesting these jumpers against Kawhi and getting pretty close to him. Like, man, I would just never stop thinking he better not land on my foot. Like if I'm like the entry level, he's not entry level anymore, but like the young assistant coach who ruins our season, I that's it for me.
Right. Well, it's like the fine line of like trying to make a game like without getting somebody hurt. So that's usually how practices go. But in terms of like Domas and his thumb and all that, like you won't even know. The guy's out there playing like normal.
All right, let's go through a little Kevin Huerter history. I think the first thing before this season that would have popped into people's minds is Game 7 against the Sixers, where you explode for 20-something points. I think 26 points, shooting over Seth Curry, floaters in the pick and roll over Embiid. What was like, and casual NBA fans probably were not super familiar with your game up until that point. And even Brian Anderson, who I love, was on play-by-play. And I was rewatching some of your shots yesterday. And like halfway through the game, everyone's like, oh, Kevin Huerter's kind of got a lot of points. And you made a shot over Seth. And Brian Anderson just goes, okay, Kevin Huerter. Okay, Kevin, like, okay, I guess this is happening. So what's that game like for you? Like, are you just so focused on the result, the team result, that you don't even realize like this is kind of a big game? Or do you start to feel like, well, they're kind of letting me go one-on-one against Seth Curry and it's working? Like, what's that like for you as a role player at that time?
Yeah, I mean, we were so beat up at that point in the series that people didn't know. And so like Bogdanovich, Bogey, he wasn't even supposed to play that game. He literally played. He told us all before, like, I'm just going to be a decoy. I'm going to be a decoy. I'm going to run around. There was so much, obviously, pressure on Trae to produce. I think we had different guys out. And so it had been somebody different that whole series. Lou Williams had a big Game 5 that kind of won it for us. We went back and lost Game 6. And so we go Game 7, and like I said, like everyone's beat up. So I remember in the locker room before the game, Gallo Gallo's a man of very few words, but when he does speak, it's like, okay, that was pretty intelligent. Like Gallo spoke. And so Gallo like came up to me before the game and was like, you have to shoot. He's like, we won't win unless you shoot. You have to shoot. If we lose and you take 20 shots, like so be it, but you have to shoot. And he like pointed at bogeys like you can't move. And so I basically went in that game like I'm just gonna be super aggressive. And I think my first shot of the game, I came off a pin down and like hit a three pretty deep in front of our bench. And that was for me kind of like okay, that felt pretty good. The first couple shots went in. I had a good rhythm to start the game, and then just kind of found a matchup I liked and kept trying to get to my spots, get in the paint. I was able to get to the free throw line. And but it was a game that I think our team knew I had a matchup that we liked, that we wanted to exploit, and was just trying to stay aggressive. And people kept passing me the ball and shots kept going in.
What's the aftermath of a game like that for you? Because that's game 7, second round of the playoffs. It's the only game going on. Everyone's watching that game. I don't know if you have like family at the game, and that's a mega game that you come up monster clutch in. Like, what's the locker room like? Is there a game ball? What's that night like for you?
Yeah, it was nuts. It was not. I mean, to be honest, it started on the court. We're in Philly as crazy fans. I think everyone knows that. It's no secret. They started throwing stuff on the court with about 10, 15 seconds left. I think we were taking the ball out of bounds. And so that was the first time for me. That was a true like fulfillment. Like we had just come in here and beat these guys in game 7. Like the fans are throwing stuff at the home team. And so Zarat, obviously we had a bunch of family there. We had Quavo at the time. He came in the locker room, like wearing my jersey. I think he had an album or a song that just came out. So he's dancing to it. I mean, we were on cloud 9, and that lasted pretty much throughout that night. I believe that same night we flew to Milwaukee and got to Milwaukee getting ready for the next series. But yeah, that feeling in the locker room afterwards, obviously we knew we were underdogs, took down the number 1 seed, a team that I think a lot of people thought they're going to gentleman sweep us. Didn't think we really stood a chance in that series. And so I think for us, that was everybody's coming out party. We'd struggled a lot the first couple years before that. Even struggled the first half of that year, and were able to get hot, obviously, at the right time. And so I think everyone in the locker room, that was the first time I think everyone truly felt like, wow, like, we're doing something. We're a dangerous team.
Now you come from a basketball family. Both your sisters play. I know your parents are super invested in your career. Were anyone at that game?
Yeah, they're there. They're at all the first 2 rounds of that series were great. They're all East Coast games. So we played the Knicks and Philly, so they're at every game.
I heard your parents are like following you around right now, right? Are they going to like arena to arena watching you play?
Yeah, I mean, they have a goal. They're trying to hit every NBA arena. So they've done 14 out of 15 on the East Coast. So they haven't done Toronto. They hit every other East Coast, and then they just hit Utah this week, and now they're actually out here in Sacramento for the weekend. I think we have a couple games. We play the Lakers Saturday and somebody else Monday. But yeah, their goal, they're every year they knock off like 3 or 4, and by the end of it, they're trying to hit everyone.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Keegan Murray, I've heard I don't want to say mentorship because that sounds like he's a little kid, but you've like gravitated toward Keegan and he's gravitated toward you. And it's interesting because he was kind of a controversial pick for the Kings at 4 ahead of Ivy, and has had a little bit of an up and down rookie season, but has really settled in the last month. I think he's been really good. What is that like when people say you've taken him under your wing or whatever? Like, what does that mean? Is that basketball? Is that hanging out off the court? And it kind of, why him? Why you? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So Keegan, obviously, he went to Iowa. So I'm really good friends with the McCaffrey family. Fran, obviously, he coached at Siena, which is where my dad went to college. And so literally grew up with the McCaffrey kids. Connor's my age. Pat's a couple years younger. And so I've always watched Iowa from afar. Keegan was there, obviously, 2 years and spoke with Connor through a lot of that. And so right away, Keegan got drafted here. I wasn't traded here yet. And then once I got traded here, Connor gave me the whole rundown on him. Hey, he does this. He doesn't like doing this. You got to get him to come out more and blah, blah, blah. And so you get here and Keegan, he's a super simple guy. Like he knows basketball and really that's it. It's to and from his house. He everywhere we go, I think every state, every single arena, every state is his first experience there. Most foods that he eats that we go for team meals, they're like his first experience eating that food. And so he's just a kid. It's just like he's got to come out of his shell. He's got to put himself out there a little more. And so, we have fun with him. Other guys on the team, obviously he's a rookie. He's got his rookie duties, but just everything feels like it's new for him. And so you're seeing this guy like lead the state of Iowa for the first time and get experience to all these new things. And he's been great. He's super smart. There's a rookie curve he's got to get over, and just learning the NBA and learning different players. But I think it's more fun seeing him off the court and trying like the simplest of foods that you're just like, Keegan, how
what are we talking about? Like what has he tried that you were like, dude, you never tried that before? Or on the flip side, like what's the most adventurous thing he's tried?
I mean, everything. Like, I don't think he's at sushi. Like it's like grilled cheese is like his favorite food. He likes just plain pasta. He won't eat chicken parm anymore because apparently that's all they ate in college, and he like can't look at it. He eats chicken, rice, and like a vegetable every single day for dinner. So he just like, he has like 10 foods that he sticks with, and he won't try anything else. His favorite artist is Rod Wave, and he's like his replay. So at the end of, you have that replay on Apple Music or whatever, like Rod Wave was like 6,000 hours, and his next closest was like 500. And so you ask him like, okay, like, Keegan, do you listen to this guy or this guy or this guy? The other day I was like, hey, do you listen to country? Do you like this? And he's like, why would I listen to country? It's like, Keegan, you're from Iowa. You got to listen to country at some point. And so he's very simple. He sticks to what he knows. And obviously he knows basketball really well, so he's pretty successful in it.
Did you know De'Aaron Fox at all before you got traded there?
A little bit. He was my year out of high school, so I was out of camp with him before, but personally not too much, just from playing against him.
What's your early impressions of, obviously we know his game, he's fast, you got to run with him, he'll get you open shots in the pick and roll, big time crunch time player for multiple years now, but like what else, what has got, I guess, maybe surprised you about him?
His maturity, honestly. He's his maturity and his work. Fox is another guy. He's kind of a homebody, same way that Keegan is. He's not a guy that really is out in public too much. I think he's very comfortable in his own environments, but like he's a workaholic. He definitely gets his work in. That was one thing I noticed pretty early on in the summer, is how much he's in the gym, and obviously how good he is. But De'Aaron has been great. He brings a maturity to our team. He's not the most outspoken guy, but I think he can calm everybody down. He's somebody similar to other guys. It's not like he's talking a lot. He's never the guy in the room that talks the most, but when he does talk, people listen to him. And he's kind of our unspoken leader in a lot of ways. We definitely look to him, especially at the end of games, to make plays and win games for us. But I think for me, the most impressive thing has definitely been his maturity.
Who talks on your team? I mean, obviously, I know Mike Brown is a talker, but like, who talks? Who's the player who talks?
Malik Monk. Malik Monk.
Well, Malik does talk. You're right.
Malik talks for everybody else, but Domas too. Domas is always trying to bring everybody along. He's like I think he tells me about 4 or 5 times a game, like, come on, get hot. We need this win. And Domas is same with myself. Like after every game, looking at the standings, seeing where we are, paying very close attention to obviously how we're doing. But Domas is a guy I think that rallies everybody and is constantly like trying to push everybody over the course of the game, and in practices, like, come on, we can do this. Like, let's continue to push forward. And Malik is just like the comic relief at all points. Malik is funny. But Malik talks for everybody else. So he's been great.
You just played the Hawks. Obviously you have a lot of friends still with the Hawks. Are you surprised like at the turmoil there that never seems to stop? Did you get to catch up with people like, dude, what's going on here?
Yeah. Obviously that everything becomes over a microscope and you don't win as much as you're supposedly supposed to. There's a lot of stories that came out of there in my first 4 years that weren't true, that weren't accurate.
Really?
That stuff was reported that was either blown way out of proportion or just straight up didn't happen. Things that were said in team meetings or everybody always loves to pick on John. Everybody always says that John is creating this, creating that. And like, John is like the nicest guy you'll meet. Like John he's a military family. He's please and thank you. He is a handshake with every single person, from security guards to equipment managers, the head coach. Like, John is the nicest guy. And for some reason, everyone is like, points to him as like he's the problem, or he's saying this, which most of it is never true. And so there's been stories that have come out of there this year. I'm not sure how true any of them are. They might be, they might not be, but I think just with that team, if they had a couple more wins over their belt, then they wouldn't be put under the microscope that they're doing. So just unfortunate, obviously.
Did you like playing with Trae Young? Because on one hand, you're going to get a lot of open shots. On the other hand, I know the Kings watched film of you and were like, I think he can do more handling of the ball, but we didn't really get to see a lot of it in Atlanta. Like, is it a double-edged sword? Is it easy? Like, did you like playing with Trae?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it is a double-edged sword. It's similar to Luka and Trae. They're just it's sometimes it's the play style. It's just those guys are so dominant. When you look at the numbers and you look at how easy it is for them to score, it makes a lot of sense to put the ball in their hands for over the course of the whole game. And you can't guard these guys one-on-one. Every defense, you have to do something to stop these guys, or they're going to kill you for the whole 48 minutes. And so, a lot of what Atlanta does is centric on Trae making plays and setting guys up and getting guys open. And so obviously there's times where Trae's off. There's 82 games a year, and those guys can be off some games, and there's not much you can fall back on when everything is centric and a lot of your offense is dictated over the success of one guy. And so there was times, obviously there was frustration, but Trae gets a lot of guys open. There's a lot of gravity that's pulled his way. I got a lot of wide open shots playing with him. He's one of the most dynamic scorers in the league right now, maybe the league has ever seen. I mean, you play against him last night, just his ability to draw fouls and get to any shot he wants and really just control every facet of the game, especially on the offensive side of the court, is special. And there's not a lot of guys in the league who can do that. But there was definitely points where your offense was dictated on him and with the ball in his hands. And as any player, as you want, whether it's whatever level you're at, every player wants the ball more. You ask any guy on any team, no matter what his role is on that team, he's going to say he wants the ball more. So were those times where I wish that we ran some different things, obviously, but we also had a lot of success when he was dictating the show.
Well, this system is just tailor-made for that kind of stuff, and particularly for you with Domas. And I'm going to let you go in a second, but you kind of hinted at it when you said you're checking the standings. I wonder, you just said you were not super well versed in Kings history and Kings, sadness before this season. I don't know how much you're out in public, like doing shopping and errands, but how much do you hear 16-year playoff drought? Like, how much do you guys hear it? Like, do fans talk about it with you when they see you, and and what would it mean to snap it?
Yeah, I think it mean everything to this city. That's it's something that's brought up. You honestly hear about it probably once a day. It's by some other fan. Just simply going to the barbershop. Going to the barbershop, I'm sitting there, and the people sitting around you, it's just like we don't even ask for a lot. They're like, well, we're just asking to make the playoffs. It's like, we're not even asking you to win the whole thing. We're not asking you to be top 2 in the West. It's like, we need something to root for. It's like, we haven't had much to root for around here for years. And that's been, for me, the greatest part about Sacramento so far are the fans and the attention that we get. And there's nothing else here. It's the Sacramento Kings, and that's it. Sacramento, I guess in other sports, there's, they can root for the Bay, or they can root for other teams out there. But like, the one thing Sacramento has is the Kings. And so every single person here follows and roots for the Kings. And now that we're finally giving them something to root for, you feel the energy, and you can feel how much the city is rooting for us. And our home games, I mean, we went on a 6-game homestand, and we came home, and our first home game was on like a Thursday or Wednesday night, and like the place was popping. And it was, right away from the start of the jump, there's, people standing, and it's a true basketball atmosphere. There's a lot of fan base in the NBA where it's entertainment. The NBA is moving towards entertainment, and this club and these boxes and fan experience and shows. But like Sacramento, the arena is built to watch basketball, and the fans are there to root and watch basketball. Similar to, for me, how I think Boston works or how the Knicks work. Those fans go to those games to watch and root for the team, where it's not like that everywhere in the NBA. And so in that sense, we got really good fans. They're behind us. They're loud. And I think the Beam, it's people.
The Beam is cool.
Corny.
The Beam is cool.
It's original, right? Like it's
the
original.
Beam, the worm will turn on the Beam. Like there will be people, the too cool for school people will start to be like, oh, it's lame. It's not lame. It's original. It's organic. The Beam is cool, and it's going to stay cool.
It is. And I don't know anybody else that does it. So it's another thing that the fans have gotten behind, and you hear the chants towards the end of the games. So it's been great for us. It's been great for me.
I did have one more question. I forgot. There's Kevin Huerter. There's Kayvon, which I think is when you're being very aggressive and shooting. So do your new teammates, have they carried on Kayvon? There's another one we'll get to, but have they carried on Kayvon?
Yeah, they have. It's like every nickname I have is like, it varies on the day what people say. But yeah, Kayvon has traveled. I'm in K9 now that we're in SAC. I still get the red velvet. So I think in a lot of ways guys like to say to bust on me, but it still carries.
I heard there's another persona which I was not aware of. Kelvin. Has Kelvin traveled with you? Do your new teammates know about Kelvin? And tell people who Kelvin is.
Kelvin is like the opposite of Kayvon. So if there's like a game I'm being passive or not aggressive enough, hasn't made it to Sacramento, but there's coaches back in Atlanta that would come to the bench like, come on, Kelvin, we need to pick it up. So I knew exactly what they were talking about right away.
I don't know a lot of guys who have this many personas. I don't know what the plural of persona.
I don't get what
a lot
the
of persona.
Everyone always asks me like, what's your favorite nickname? Like, I don't know the obsession with so many nicknames. Like if people could just pick one, let's stick to it. But it feels like I get a new nickname like every week.
Hey, look, it doesn't matter now because you guys are playing great. You're 20-17 as we're taping this. And I think you had that big win streak. You had the big win streak maybe late October, early November, whenever it was. And you were on fire, and everyone was kind of waiting for like, all right, let's see what happens when they get punched with a little adversity, with a losing streak, whatever. Like, is it going to be same old Kings? And you guys haven't been same old Kings. Here you are, you're fifth in the West. And you're playing great, man. I hope it keeps up for you and the team. And maybe we just got you into Utah for the 3-point shootout. Who knows? But congrats on a great half season. But I don't want to congratulate you yet because I know you got big goals for you and the team. But it's been really fun to watch, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. We got a long way to go, but we're doing all right so far. So I appreciate having me on.